Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
California. What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, April 29th. LA Galaxy 2-0 losers at Austin on early Saturday morning. It was early for you. It was early for me. It looked like the Galaxy never got out of bed, so maybe that all makes some sense. We're going to talk about the 2-0 loss. We are also going to talk about one of the big focus points of that game, which is Miguel Berry as well, and the LA Galaxy giving up early goals and struggling to beat a bunkered down defense. So a lot of stuff to get to. Galaxy will face Seattle coming up. So a lot to talk about, a lot to get to. We're glad to have him back. He's been out traveling. You might know him as a hockey reporter. Maybe he's a basketball reporter, but he's back right here on Corner of the Galaxy right now. It's Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter. Kev, how you doing, bud?
All right, this is going to be Dan Beckerman's worst nightmare, right? Me covering both of AEG's teams.
Oh, man, I would imagine so. Anytime you go and cover another sport, I imagine other people just, want to throw themselves off roofs or bridges, right? I mean, doesn't that sound right?
Hockey has a lot. I've been studying hockey here now for the last 2 weeks, and a lot of similarities to soccer, I think. They play with sticks, but I mean, they have offside rules. There's the attacking third, the defensive third. There's the neutral zone in the middle of the field, middle of the ice. One thing that I think would really be cool to bring over from hockey to soccer, though, is the penalty box.
Right.
If a guy gets a red card in a soccer game, he just goes off the field, he goes to the locker room, and he doesn't have to watch the game. I've been watching the Kings. They've been terrible in their penalty kill in this playoff series. And the guys go to the penalty box and they have to sit there and watch their teammates struggle to make up for their mistake. And painfully, the Kings haven't been able to do it. And so these teammates have to watch that from the penalty box, watch their team give up a goal. I think that should happen in soccer. You get a red card, you need to sit at midfield in a little box, and you need to watch your team give up the go-ahead goal. Why? Because you screwed up. I think that would be a really good addition to this sport.
Well, I mean, they're thinking about the blue cards and all that stuff. I don't know. I think I'm on the fence. Show me how it works, and maybe I'll like. I mean, I did like indoor soccer and that type of stuff. And whenever they would have blue cards and penalties and penalty plays or power plays, that type of stuff, I kind of like it. I just wonder what the big effect is on an 11 versus 11 game whenever you go down to 10 men for 2 or 5 minutes. Is it enough time to really take advantage of the one-man advantage? Is it going to be that big of a difference if stuff like that happens?
It was with Inter Miami. Remember?
Oh, 4-1. Oh, you mean the first one?
A Galaxy opener, yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't though, right? Because realistically, like the red card that came in there, how long was Delgado off the field before they finally scored that goal? It was like
five or 6 minutes. It wasn't that long because it was like 87, 88 minutes, and then they scored a couple minutes into stoppage time.
Yeah.
My recollection was like 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, I would imagine. I don't think it was that late. I think it happened earlier, and the Galaxy survived most of it. That's what I remember. But I'd have to go back and look at it. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. This whole season is already one giant blur in what has happened and what hasn't happened. Only the second loss all season for the LA Galaxy through the first 10 games. 2 losses. If I would have told you through the first 10 games, Kevin, the Galaxy would only have 2 losses and have one of the best road records in Major League Soccer, I think you would take it, right? You would take it.
Well, here's another note. This was the Galaxy, by being shut out, became the last team in MLS to get shut out.
Yeah. I was looking at that. I was going to go with that one, which is looking at them getting shut out. It's not often so far through the first 10 games. So in 9 games, the Galaxy all were able to score a goal whenever it was possible. Just looking at this game as a one-off, and we'll certainly focus on some more of the details here in a second, but just looking at it as a one-off, again, I don't think the Galaxy are in a bad position. And if you're the optimistic type right now, and I think I'd throw myself into this position, is the Galaxy played a bad game. They put themselves in bad positions, and for right now, it's probably more one-off than anything else. But there were some structural issues that I think certainly need to be talked about. So we can take it, but it's not crazy, Kevin, to say that hey, the Galaxy will lose two times in 10 games in the first 10, and any Galaxy fan would probably take that, especially with the schedule and the way it looked. Right? That's not crazy.
Yeah, it works out to like 7 or 8 losses on the season. That would be a very good season. But you're right. When you look at some of the structural things, this game to me reinforced a lot of things that I felt about this team, and we're beginning to question because they were playing so well. First of all, I've said on this show a number of times, I don't think this is a Supporters Shield or MLS Cup contender. I think it's a good team. I think it's a playoff team. I think it potentially could make a long playoff run. I don't think it's a Supporters Shield or MLS contender because it's incomplete. And I think this game showed, some of the ways it's incomplete. No backup for Joveljic. He's already missed 2 starts to injury. He's got a hip problem. We don't know how that's going to affect him going forward. Miguel Berry is not a suitable understudy. As you and I were talking before the show, he had 8 touches in 45 minutes versus Austin and no shots. He has 1 shot that was in the first game of the season. No shots. It wasn't even on target in 236 minutes this season. So that, if Joveljic is not able to play 90 minutes every weekend, there's just no one right now to step up and fill that role. Do the Galaxy have to play a different style when he's not out there? Or do they have to go get somebody? And then the back line, I still think the back line, we've talked about this too, I still think the back line lacks depth. It's really going to get a big boost from Jalen Neal coming back if he's healthy. That might take care of that problem. But this team is flawed. It's good. It's competitive. I think they're going to have a great season. It's not a Supporters Shield team, and I think some of the flaws came out in this Austin game. Excuse me.
I mean, I'll disagree with you. They're not as flawed as you think they are. All right. I will say this though: they play in the easier conference. I don't think they'll be a Supporters Shield winner because I think one of the East teams will be the better team. But you're talking one team only gets to be Supporters Shield winner out of 29, even though there should be 2 because, good Lord, why do we have them for having just one as the best record in the league when it's unbalanced and everything else, right? So that's already one of those things. But you're talking about 1 to 29. Are the LA Galaxy one of the top 5 best teams in your mind? That's sort of where I said, I go, it's like, okay, so, they're not Supporters Shield challengers. For me, my big question is, and I pointed it out and you were right there with me, is about, Miguel Berry right now. My big question is about Dejan Joveljic. Joveljic, I have no problem with what he's been able to do, but, he doesn't need to play 90 minutes every game. I'm not worried about that part. Berry does better whenever he comes on, in my opinion, Kevin, whenever he comes on with somebody to really be paired up with up there as well. He has led to some goal contributions in that position, 1 or 2, not a whole bunch though. I just, my whole thing was, and whenever I was talking to you before the show, I said, when was the last time Miguel Berry was goal dangerous? Dude, like you said, he only had 1 shot, but even before that, can we really talk about Miguel Berry being a threat to score a goal? And, it's no surprise here that Greg Vanney took him out at the halftime and sort of moved him away because there just wasn't going to be an opportunity for him to really put his stamp on the game, being he doesn't do that. That's not what he does. So I was a little surprised Vanny didn't go and start the lineup that he had in the second half as maybe the primary. Moving Joseph Paintsel in a little bit into the center and bringing Diego Fagundes on, that was all well and good. I don't mind it. I wonder if maybe they should have started that way and given themselves a little bit more juice going forward, because I thought that, well, realistically, Kevin, very realistically, the Galaxy looked like they were still in bed for the first 20, 25 minutes.
And they were. Yeah. They were. It was 10:30 in the morning for them. And you and I were talking before the show. They practice at 10:30 in the morning. It really shouldn't have affected them to the degree it did, but they were in a different time zone. They had to travel. The early morning start did affect them. Yes, you may practice at that time, but you're not used to playing. Even playing high school youth teams and stuff like that. For the most part, you're playing in the afternoon or early evening once you become a decent, competitive player. 10:30 in the morning body time for those guys had to be really tough. And Greg Vanney talked about it afterwards. He said we weren't there for the first 20 minutes. We were not we were not playing. We were not. Well, what he said we didn't show up for the first 20 minutes. I mean, it's as simple as that. This is Greg Vanney. We weren't competitively there, whether it was defending, doing the work, getting close to guys. We just weren't to the speed that we needed to be at, and the game tilted really fast. So for me, it was an unacceptable start. And I think that is not so much the team being prepared. I think it's the early morning start.
Yeah, and I also think we need to very clearly say that you are going to have bad games. We've seen the LA Galaxy have a bad game. But technically, they had a bad game against LAFC whenever they played it. You can say maybe LAFC made them play bad. That's a reasonable argument if you want to do that. But we also know that we've seen the standard of play. What we saw on Saturday, morning, noon, or night, wouldn't matter what time it is, was not a good representation of what the LA Galaxy have been so far this season. And so I'm okay with sitting here at the 30,000 foot level and looking down on that and saying, okay, speed bump, right? It's still, again, it highlights things for me. I actually like the LA Galaxy's depth. Adam gave us a $2 super chat and says Galaxy lack depth, in my opinion, need more options. Too broad, Adam. Where do they lack depth? Because the good argument you have is that they would lack depth at that second striker, at that other one. Now I saw, Mr. Provino in here saying, the Galaxy should have never let go of Billy Sharp. That was a text message thread that was being had with me on Saturday. I genuinely believe that the LA Galaxy will go out and target somebody as that backup striker in the summertime. And I think they will be more mobile than what Billy Sharp was, because as much as I loved Billy Sharp and watched him do, I would have concerns about his longevity in this season. You're already throwing question marks up about, Caceres and having Maya Yoshida back there at their ages. And Caceres has been dealing with injuries. It was another reason that Jalen Neal got time in this game, is because Caceres, they wanted to get him out. They wanted to make sure that they could get Jalen Neal in there and start getting Jalen Neal time as well. So all of these things are good, but where else are you lacking on depth? Where would you like to? In my opinion, there's probably one or two areas, but that's it. Otherwise, I like the guys who are coming off the bench. You can't tell me you don't like somebody like Diego Fagundes coming off the bench.
Well, the thing with Diego Fagundes, though, is it wasn't like for like, and it did kind of change the formation. And another thing that hadn't been mentioned is, yes, the early start was bad, and the Galaxy did not play a good game, and yada, yada, yada. But give Austin a little bit of credit. They've won 4 of their last 5, and they gave up 1 goal in their last 3 games. They gave up a goal to St. Louis and then shut out Houston and the Galaxy. So they are playing well. They may not be a good team. They certainly weren't a good team last year, but they're playing pretty well right now. So it shouldn't have been too much of a surprise that they gave the Galaxy a hard time.
I mean, you don't listen. First of all, let's be very clear. Despite the LA Galaxy's outstanding road record, going on the road in Major League Soccer is difficult. You guys can lie about it all you want. You can say it doesn't matter. You can say it doesn't matter to championship teams. Guess what? There's a reason even the best teams in the league have a better home record than they do an away record, right? So that's first. Start there. Then start with the early start time. Then going up, as we talked about on Thursday, a decent Austin team that was starting to find itself. Greg Vanney said the same thing. Then add in the fact the LA Galaxy played like crap. All right, that is what happened. Those are all the reasons that you need right there. If you want to add more and put in Joveljic not being there. Now, how much, here's a good question though. How much did Joveljic not being there, how much did that affect the game? Because if we've watched how Dejan plays, and outside of the previous game, he's not usually involved in the buildup that much, Kevin, and he hasn't been, but he's been in the right place at the right time to put away goals. This is not a Joveljic knock. This is just when you watch the LA Galaxy play against Austin, they were not playing the way that they were supposed to. Greg Vanney mentioned the speed of passing. That was one of the first things I saw, and I turned this on about 7 minutes late, which means I missed the first goal and had to go back and watch it a little bit. And I was sort of doing a couple different things while I was doing it. So I kept watching come back. But as soon as I would be able to lock on, it was too slow. It wasn't fast enough. And listen, the Galaxy had a couple chances too that Austin was able to take care of, right? So we can look at all these things and say this is the reason why the LA Galaxy lost. But if you're looking for something that they need to get better at, for me, it's about finding somebody else other than Miguel Berry. And I do think that the Galaxy have a chance to find that in the summertime. I do think that they're sort of storing that away.
I totally agree with you, because I think when you bring Fagundes in with Peck and Paintsil, I think you have a really good front three. But the problem is they're all wingers for the most part, and there's no one that's really going to sort of claim that center role. And so they have to kind of change the way they play. Another thing I think Austin did really well, and you and I talked about this before the show, is although the Galaxy have really good wingers and a lot of the offense winds up coming from the wings, they still tend to play up the middle. Everything comes through Riqui Puig, and every team in the league really tries to smother him. That's why he has 5 yellow cards and will have to sit out the Seattle game, because people go after him so much. But Austin, and even though Ricky had the most dangerous chances and the most shots in this game, even though all of those things are true, Austin really did a good job of making it tough for him. And if the ball gets bottled up in the middle and the Galaxy can't get it out, Ricky can't get it out to the wings, then that offense is going to suffer. And I think this was a sort of a master class that other teams are going to study for how to take on the Galaxy. And the Galaxy are going to have to make some adjustments. And I know other teams, as you said, other teams have tried to do this. It's sort of been the way teams have played against the Galaxy. But very few teams seem to have done it as well as Austin did in this game.
Circumstance. I didn't think Austin was particularly good. I thought Alex Ring played really well in the center, and maybe you could give some of that to Riqui Puig. Ricky did the exact same things he's done in all the games, Kevin. He gives the ball away. That's what he's been doing. There's been some criticism of him. He's also one of the Galaxy's most dangerous players. If Stuver doesn't make that save to the upper right-hand corner, the Galaxy at least get one goal there. Joseph Paintsil had a near post shot. Or a near post shallow angle sort of run and shot that Stuver was able to get a save on. The quick restart that Riqui Puig played, and the Galaxy got a shot on, which Apple decided not to. Again, and we've talked about this before, but just the television crew. Quick restarts happen. How about you pull back and give a wide angle whenever people are getting ready for a restart, and then be ready to go into your tight shots if you want, after you realize they're not going to do a quick restart, because they quick restarted their way right past the Apple television cameras, who were once again sleeping on the job. Corner kicks and set pieces, they suck at. So, but it's those little things. You can say that they took out Riqui Puig as much as you want, but the Galaxy got impatient. They took poor shot selection. This is what happens whenever we see them struggle. And then they made 3 or 4 really good saves. The Galaxy had 7 shots blocked in this game, Kevin. So that to me means they were generating offense. They only got 5 shots on goal. And that's the same as Austin did. You look at XG, and the Galaxy actually had less XG than Austin, and probably should have, because I don't think they created a ton of chances. But it's not like Austin ran away with this game. They were transitional, and they picked their moments. So you can do what you want to Riqui Puig, and you can try to play that way. I just think that there's more people who can punish you, just not in this game. It would be too narrow of a mind for us to say, oh, well, all you have to do is take away Riqui Puig, when teams have tried to do that, and then the Galaxy play around that and will play out to the wings and score goals. So, yeah, I mean, Austin, I think, did an okay job. Let's put it that way.
But by the way, speaking of Joveljic, I don't know if you saw this quote from, or maybe you were on the call with Greg Vanney afterwards. He did say something that didn't get a lot of attention, because if we can agree that the Galaxy are a different team without Joveljic, and at least right now, until they figure out a way to play without him, they're not as dangerous without him. Greg Vanney had something very interesting to say. He said that Joveljic has been kind of playing with a bit of a hip injury that's been holding him back.
Yep.
He's honestly probably been at 75% the last few games. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And then Vanny said, it's just getting to a point where do you want to keep doing this at 75%, or do we need to shut him down?
Yes.
And you don't even have to read between the lines to say that the Galaxy are thinking about maybe putting Joveljic on the shelf for a couple of games. And, is this the time to do that? They're going to play a Seattle team that only has 1 win, and they're going to play on turf. You certainly don't want a guy with a hip injury playing a lot of minutes on turf. Is this the game where he sits out? It's just the start of a series of games where he sits out.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Vanny also said in that same thing that he's week to week, right? So basically, he's week to week, and they're going to keep their eye on, and they're going to see if they can get him back and progress him. The bottom line is, and Greg Vanney pointed it out, was he goes, listen, we got a lot of games coming up in May. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in May for the LA Galaxy. So you're not going to be able to force Joveljic, if he's only 70, 75%, to play in those 6 games if he's that way. So it does make sense to do it. And like you said, on turf against a struggling Seattle team, all that makes sense. Again, road games. Win your home games, and the Galaxy will do just fine this year. Not only, you still have to have some results on the road, but the Galaxy have already showed that they're capable of getting results on the road. I'm not worried about their road form. I don't think this was indicative of anything other than they had a crappy game. And you can say, hey, they couldn't figure it out. Again, they did have chances. They did have some stuff. Impatience. Again, we've seen it over and over again. Too slow of ball movement. This team plays so much better. Everybody understand this because I think that there's a negativity to Vanny ball, right, Kevin? Sort of the plodding buildup, the steady increase in danger for the LA Galaxy. The idea behind this is to move people around, to exploit spaces, to overload in areas, and to do that in a way that you can consistently do that. And the fastest way the LA Galaxy are able to do that, by the way, as one of the most direct teams in Major League Soccer, as of a couple games ago. The LA Galaxy are one of the most direct teams in Major League Soccer. Tell all your friends that whenever they complain about Vanny ball. But the idea is to exploit those transition areas, and whenever you don't have that, to use your possession and control to control the game, and then create the overloads, and then build up and find those little passes in between. When the Galaxy play at the speed they're capable of, and we saw it in the first 30 minutes against San Jose, when they're capable of that, nobody... I don't think anybody in the Western Conference can touch them. I would be surprised if anybody in the Eastern Conference could touch them. They're that controlling whenever they can play at the speed that they should play at.
Put that schedule up again, by the way.
What was that?
Put the schedule up again.
Okay, bring the schedule up. Go ahead.
So another strange start, right? 3:45, not nearly as bad as the start they had in Austin, and they'll be in the same time zone, but still, right. Another unusual start time.
It's a Sunday afternoon game. So yeah, I know it's stupid.
And then what that Salt Lake game is, right? May 11th. You know what that is?
That is a rematch of the 2009 MLS Cup.
No, you're going too hard. It's Jalen Neal bobblehead night.
Oh, that's right. That is good. It's like Star Wars night too, right? I think that's what it is. Yeah. Okay, cool. So excited about that. But that's also right now number 1 and number 2 in the Western Conference. Right? So our RSL currently sitting above the LA Galaxy in the Western Conference on tiebreakers, whichever one that is. Can't remember right now. Don't care. As Maya Yoshida says, it's too early to look at the table, which I agree with.
But you're missing the point. They're gonna give away bobbleheads.
So what point is that? You think that means they're gonna win games?
That means you get a bobblehead.
Are you showing up? Are you showing up to get
over
a
100 bobbleheads in here? I gotta add Jalen Neal to the collection.
Oh man,
I got a blonde-headed Landon Donovan bobblehead doll.
Adam, by the way, $2 super chat says, I agree with you, Josh. Second striper is what I meant. Good. And then Adam says, any players you think the Galaxy is targeting in the summer? Don't listen. I'm not that guy who's going to be like, oh, this is who it is. There are 1,000 different players that could probably play for the LA Galaxy. I will look at rumors, and whenever the rumors come out, I'll be like, oh, okay, that's what that is. That's what that could mean. I haven't even taken the temperature of the room yet in terms of what the LA Galaxy might do, might not do, all those sorts of things. Right now, we're living on pure speculation. But if we're looking at areas of need, I think we would all be blind and stupid to say that the Galaxy aren't looking for another striker, and that maybe has been in their plans since the preseason. And perhaps we're like, let's see if we really need it, because we may have another area of need that we need to take care of. As it stands right now, I actually feel pretty good that the LA Galaxy look like they have a lot of other things. Remember, Garces is supposed to be coming in for the LA Galaxy on defense as well. That means that the defense and that center back should be fairly well backstopped, and you'd expect that. It's just one of those things. So no, I don't do that. Eric, by the way, $2 super chat says Austin goalkeeper played well, and I agree that Stuver usually plays pretty well.
He's like the Galaxy killer. He always seems to play well against the Galaxy. He's a hugely underrated goalkeeper in my mind. I think he's outstanding.
Well, I mean, I think he had more saves than anybody in Major League Soccer, and that's not one of those good things because the Galaxy have had their goalkeepers. Didn't David Bingham lead the league in saves a whole bunch of times whenever he was with the Galaxy, right? Because
probably one of the years he gave up 67 goals too.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see. Adam, $5 super chat. Do you guys think the Galaxy need a backup right back besides Cuevas if Yamane goes down again in the future? Possibly. I think there's more options now. With Garces coming in and what you're able to do with him and a 6'1" defender and how you can play 3 in the back or some other things. There's some options there. I don't know how much money you would be willing to spend on a backup right back. You also have John Nelson, who I think can play on either side, by the way. That's just me. But I think he can play on either side. But I think there's options in there. There's also options, and we've been talking about this, Kevin, just looking for like that 3 about the second striker. And Greg Vanney went to one of those, which was bring in, Joseph Paintsil into a center forward position more, and allow Diego Fagundes to come in. And then you have Peck and Paintsil and Fagundes sort of on that top line, doing that. And that has always been an option at striker. So for me, if I have to play another game without Dejan Joveljic, Kevin, I'm starting in the second half lineup. Basically, the LA Galaxy came out in that second half, and I'm starting Fagundes, and I am putting Paintsil or Peck into that center forward role. Or, quite honestly, you could put Fagundes in that center forward role as well if you wanted to, and still leave Peck and Paintsil sort of in their more natural positions. Again, whenever I'm moving players around and moving pieces around, Kevin, I try to move the least amount of pieces around so that way you don't get too much change. But we've seen Joseph Paintsil play next to Gabriel Peck in sort of that right-hand side lineup. So it doesn't mean that, I thought Paintsil was widely out of position in those. Again, bad shot selection for me. I was super disappointed in that. I did not think that that Cáceres and Yoshida, bathed themselves in glory. But whenever you have somebody like Miguel Berry who gives up the ball at least once on that second goal, he may have given it up twice, but gets slide tackled from behind. It's all about anticipating positions, right? So if you turn the ball over whenever you're attacking and it doesn't look like anybody's near you, and then you turn that ball over and everybody's now out of position, and then it's a quick transition, and Obrian over there on the right-hand side, who we mentioned on Thursday was going to be a problem. So again, the Galaxy shot themselves in the foot so many times in this game over and over again, and then still ended up, 2-0. You can lament the lack of chances created. You can do all those things, Kevin. For me, it just comes down to a fact that, for some of that first half, I felt like the Galaxy were playing with 10 guys. That's me.
When we start hearing rumors about the second striker coming in, or the additional striker, what do you think the profile is going to be? And by that, I mean, I think this is going to wind up being a very interesting conversation, and here's why. You can go and get a Billy Sharp type guy, a guy who's going to be productive out of the box.
You already had Billy Sharp. Kevin.
I said a Billy Sharp type guy.
Okay.
I mean, somebody who's a veteran guy who's coming in to play half a season, as Billy Sharp did, played very well, helped the Galaxy win some games. He was good. He was great, but he wasn't part of the future, and he was never thought of being part of the future. Or, I know you don't have a ton of money to spend. There's not a DP spot, but or you can look at it and say, look, we've got, an early 20s Riqui Puig. We've got Peck. We've got Paintsil, young guys. They're signed to long-term contracts. Joveljic is a young guy. We're still kind of on the fence on whether he's the guy of the future, but we're going to give him a shot. Do you bring in a guy that's going to work in that sort of combination, a younger player who's going to build along with those guys, who's going to be part of the future, who's going to be, there's going to be a Paintsil, Peck, whomever front line for years to come? Or do you bring in a Billy Sharp guy, someone's going to help us get through the season, and we'll look at this again next winter?
I think you target both of those. I think you look at both, and then you figure out which one is the best deal for you, which one you can make happen. And this is why I say that. It's not to sit on the fence, but it really is, for me, about targeting the right body type, the right physical characteristics. So I'm going to tell you right now, one of the things they're going to look for is, I think, a little bit of height. That's what Miguel Berry has, right? The Galaxy are an overall pretty small team, so you want to change things up and get away from Joveljic. you need somebody with height. I think you're going to need somebody with some physicality. I think you're actually looking for, in terms of strikers, someone similar to Joveljic in that he can finish sort of the rebounds and clean up things. But you want a guy who's very much in the vein of like Alan Gordon, Kevin, who is good in the air, who is able to come in and add a different dimension than what you get just with Joveljic. Because there's two things that are going to happen. One is Joveljic could get hurt. And then you're going to need this guy to play by himself. So you need to have somebody who's capable of being that single striker, but you also need somebody who can sometimes pair with Joveljic whenever the Galaxy are down, bringing in two guys or bringing in a second striker to be able to pair and play off of. And again, the height, the physicality for me is one of the most important parts. That height and physicality also helps you in set pieces. So when you're trying to close out games at the end of the game, it's the last 5 minutes or something like that, Joveljic comes off, and then you have somebody who comes in who is physical and tall and can get in on the set pieces that you know are coming at the end of the game that could possibly be one of those deciders, right? So one of the ways to get better at set pieces, that would be one. By the way, congratulations to the LA Galaxy. Gave up 0 set pieces in this game, Kevin. I mean, that's progress right there whenever you think about it. 2 from the run of play, but none from set pieces. Galaxy are on their way.
Well, and you just made a really good case for Alan Gordon being, again, one of the unsung stars in Galaxy lore. I mean, you look at the guy's stats and they're not overly impressive, but if you watched him play, he was really a key part of those good teams that he played on.
I got something for you. We have to discuss this. Is mandatory. Alan Gordon was at the San Jose game. They had Alan Gordon and Sean Franklin there as Galaxy alumni, and Alan Gordon was there. And somebody took a picture with Alan Gordon. He was down walking around on the field, and they do the thing where you're in the stands and they hold the phone out and they take a picture. So Alan Gordon held the phone out, took a picture, and then gave the phone back to the person. That person posted it and said, "I finally got a picture with Sasha Kljestan." Right? And I'm like, and by the way, they both have the big stashes right now, so I can kind of get that. But what in God's name is happening that Sasha Kljestan is being like mistaken for Alan Gordon? Alan Gordon is being mistaken for Sasha Kljestan. I don't even think those two look like each other. I don't even think they could be considered brothers. It's just the stash. Are we that face blind to people that all you need is like a nice little bushy mustache there, and then if I grow one, will I be mistaken for Sasha Kljestan as well, Kevin? Kevin, could you put out the big stash and maybe shave the goatee a little bit? Would you be mistaken for Sasha Kljestan if that happened?
Well, if they did, they'd say, "Oh my God, Sasha let himself go. He's gained 60 pounds. He looks horrible." By the way, Alan Gordon played for San Jose too, so that's probably why he was at that game.
Well, they're the Galaxy alumni and all that. So, by the way, John down in the chat room says, "Don't worry, Josh. I get Ima Boateng and Omar Gonzalez confused all the time." There you go. So that was good. By the way, Debbie writes in and says, "I don't understand why they get rid of Preston Judd and replaced with Berry." I will say that because San Jose wanted Preston Judd and they paid money for him, and that's probably the best reason if anything goes. John also says in the chat room, if the viewers blur their eyes, if you just squint a little bit, John says that I look like prime Landon Donovan. I know, with the hairlines are similar right now. If the best thing about me and LD is that I am still always going to be taller than him. That's the only part I will ever have above Landon Donovan, is that I'm just taller than him. So, yeah, I don't know.
You're not so much tall. It's Landon is short.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you think you're 7 feet tall, so you and Landon Donovan could probably stand back to back, and it would be a race. But you think you're taller than everybody.
That's because I tower over Eric.
Yeah, that's must be it. Eric's taller than me.
I call him tiny.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever we go and look at FOP Mob and all the scores that they had Miguel Berry in the very center there with his 45 minutes of play there at a 5.5 rating. One of the guys right behind him was John McCarthy in goal at 5.7, Caceres at 5.8. There are no green except for Riqui Puig. By the way, again, the guy who played who apparently got bodied by Austin got the highest grade for the LA Galaxy on the night. So just one of those things to watch and take care of. A lot
of green on the other side.
Yeah, well, that's usually what happens to the winning team. Driussi was really good. I thought Ring was outstanding. You can give it to FOP Mob values goals. So when you look at Rubio and his goal, that's going to help. Obrion with his 8.4. Again, he was the guy I was sort of highlighting on Thursday that was like, this my guy might be a problem, and was. Absolutely. But again, Austin was a problem in limited spurts. The LA Galaxy were more of a threat over a longer time, but just didn't ever rise to that final ball. Greg Vanney talked about moving, Joseph Paintsill into the center, trying to create more space, but because, Austin was playing so compact, that there wasn't a lot of space behind there to do. So it takes something. Quite honestly, it takes something like a Riqui Puig goal that Stuver saved to sort of open that up and create more space there and make Austin suddenly start to worry at 2-1. 2-1, that game becomes real different. So I never thought the Galaxy were out of it. I never thought the Galaxy were going to be, got run off the field. I don't. They still played like crap. They played like crap on the road, and they played like crap against a team that's pretty hot right now, and they got beat as they should have. It shouldn't be a surprise. You shouldn't be shocked. You shouldn't be like, I can't believe this team. This shouldn't throw you into some crisis of understanding what the LA Galaxy have done so far. The bottom line is the Galaxy are actually a pretty good team. Are they great? No. I can even tell you that the Galaxy, this isn't even the best start that Greg Vanney has had with the Galaxy, Kevin. In fact, it's the third best start out of 4 years that the Galaxy have had. Is that right? That is right. He right now, through 10 games, 18 points for the LA Galaxy. Through 10 games in 2022, 19 points. Through 10 games in 2021, 21 points. This is the third best start for the LA Galaxy under Greg Vanney. And yet, I would argue, this is probably the best start by an LA Galaxy team under Greg Vanney, just because of the teams they've played and the way they've done. Points-wise, it won't say that. If your eyes are telling you, though, that something's different, I think you should follow that with your eyes. That's what I would think, Kevin. What are you, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think looking at the Galaxy and then looking ahead to Seattle, I'm kind of coming to the conclusion, well, I've had this conclusion for a while, but it seems obvious now, that the front office does make a difference. I mean, you look around at this team and the performance and just the optimism around the team. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that now Will Kuntz is in charge and Chris Klein and Jovan Kirovski are gone. There just seems to be more confidence. It seems to be more upbeat. And then, and I say that in comparison to Seattle, you look at Seattle, they're 1-5-3. Mm-hmm. Well, what's the difference? Well, Garth Langaway left as GM ahead of the 2023 season. That was the year that they went on to win the CONCACAF Champions League, but missed the playoffs for the first time. And now they're 1-5-3. Garth Langaway never didn't play a minute for that team, but he built that team. And I think maybe the reason he left is he saw that it was getting old, it was getting brittle, and things were going to go south. But it did get old and it did get brittle very fast. And the front office there in Seattle just, they look like deer in the headlights. They're just not moving to replace any of these pieces. And so the idea that, Brian Smetcher is not a bad coach all of a sudden. He's still a great coach. He just doesn't have the pieces, and that comes from the front office. And I think we can see that with the Galaxy. I mean, you pointed out that this is only their third best start. The other two starts came under Klein and Kirovski. This one feels different. And I think the front office, empirically, you can't look at the evidence and say, oh, yeah, the front office screwed this up and this is why this game was lost. You can't say that. There's no way to prove that. It's more sort of an attitude thing. And this team just feels different. Things feel more optimistic, even though, as you just showed, the record doesn't really point that out.
Special teams, special plays, special players. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. Let's look at the standings on the Eastern Conference right now. Miami, 21 points. They're up there at the top. 11 games played, 6 wins, 2 losses, 3 draws. That's right. The LA Galaxy have 2 losses. There's only a couple teams out there that have only 1 loss. New York and Columbus on the eastern side. And I think just Minnesota on the western side. Losses. Oh, no, Minnesota has 2. So it's St. Louis who has the 6 draws. That's what it was. Always.
Well, you were talking at the top. Go back to leave those standings up there, because you were talking at the top. Like, is the Galaxy one of the top 5 teams in the league? Are they a Supporters' Shield contender? And when you look at the West, I don't see any super teams there.
Nope.
Salt Lake is good. The Galaxy are good. Vancouver, I'm kind of cheering for them because their fans have struggled for so long. I really like their manager up there.
You can cheer for them, but I don't know. To me, if you're talking about one of the pretenders at the top 5, Vancouver might be that pretender. I don't know.
I totally 100% agree with you. I'm just kind of hoping, and not because I'm a huge Whitecaps fan. I do love Vancouver, but it's just that their fans have suffered for so long, and I do kind of like their manager. But there's no super teams here. Now go to the East. And I think there's some teams that you can argue are really good teams. That's obviously Miami, if they can avoid getting injured and those guys can continue to get to bed before the sun goes down and get their rest. I think they'll be pretty good. Cincinnati, I'm not so sure about New York or Toronto. Columbus, I think, is a really good team. We know Philadelphia under Jim Curtin is really good. I think you're right. I think the Supporters Shield winner is going to come out of this side of the bracket. And, I think you had a pretty good idea at the top. We really didn't explore it much. But if you had a Supporters Shield winner in each conference, and then you had something sort of like, the Community Shield game in the English Premier League, that starts before the season, where the two Supporters Shield winners meet, and maybe it's a charity game, maybe there's a trophy involved. That would be kind of a cool thing to add to the MLS schedule, although the schedule's too long now as it is, so maybe that's a dumb idea. But if there was a Supporters Shield winner on each side, then they met in a game, the first game of the year, the next season, that would be kind of cool.
It would be fun. I just think that, it's the closest you're going to get to sort of balance. It's just the Supporters Shield has lost a lot of meaning for me. But there's an argument that the Supporters Shield winner could come out of the Western Conference because it's softer and because you don't play as many tough games. And if you have one good team there that can consistently pick up points, that maybe that's better than all of the East Coast teams that are going to be beating up on each other. I rarely subscribe to the East is better than the West, and that, it hasn't been that way for a little while. And the West has been, really one of the dominant conferences for a while. But when you look at the East and the teams this year, I think it's very clear that there are 3 or 4 really good teams in the Eastern Conference. Tom Bogert, I think, continues to say there's no super teams yet. There's no unbeatables. Miami isn't even close. Like, if I'm ranking the Eastern Conference right now, I probably have Cincinnati or Columbus as my 1 and 2. I might throw New York in there as a 3, and then maybe Miami or Miami's 3. So just seeing that, again, the points per game and the games played, Miami still has played at least one more game than all the teams, and in some cases against Philadelphia, they have 3 more games. They have 3 more games than Philadelphia. Good Lord, Philadelphia, that's a sleeper right there. That's a sleeper for Philadelphia. I'm telling you, that's where it's coming from, Kevin. Philadelphia's rising up to the top here real soon. I wanted to see what Philadelphia's points per game, 1.63. So right now, if Philadelphia was put into the points per game, they would be in 6th or 7th. Yeah, between 7th. So they'd be in 8th place at 1.63. So keep that in mind, that Philadelphia is all the way down in 15th in the Supporters Shield, and literally their points per game has them all the way up to 7th. So that's a sleeping giant right there. Just one of those.
Yeah, Jim Curtin always has good teams, and he knows how to get the best out of his players.
He does, absolutely. I'm trying to think. This is going to be a thing, and we'll continue to watch it. The LA Galaxy's designated players have played 86.1% of the total available minutes. I can't. So we're almost a third of the way through the season, right? 11 games is
that's going to change this weekend, though. That's going to change this weekend with Riqui out.
Yeah, it is, but it won't change that much. Riqui Puig. Hold on, let me show you. Riqui Puig has played 99.9% of the total available minutes. He'll be fine.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah, exactly. He'll be fine. He'll be okay, right? In all that. But whenever you look at this, again, one of the LA Galaxy's best designated player seasons since 2018 was 62.9% in 2021. That was the best they had, and right now they're averaging 86.1 over the long term with the designated players. I absolutely think that this number, this 86.1%, and keeping that around 75%, is going to be critical to the LA Galaxy's success in Major League Soccer. I know that's stupid. That seems obvious, having your designated players play, but looking at Puig and Paintsil and Peck, the Killer Peas themselves, when looking at that, I think that has such a huge effect on the LA Galaxy over 34 games plus that it's going to make a difference in the standings.
It's obvious, isn't it? I mean, if the salary structure is set up that way, where 3 players get the lion's share of your salary, the lion's share of your commitment, your resources, and you sign those guys because you think they're going to contribute on the field. And if they're not on the field, then you've just wasted all those resources. What do you think the line is? Is it 80%? Is it 75%? What separates a successful? And again, we're not talking about the win-loss. Just right. You have your designated players, you've paid them, they're on the field. What do you think? 75% of the minutes?
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a great line. I'll just tell you, I don't know, and I haven't gone back past 2018 to know what some of those MLS Cup years were. But I would imagine 75% seems like a great number. A 75% to me seems like a minimum number, right? Like that's the absolute minimum that it should be. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
The Galaxy have had a ton of DPs, going back to Gio, who missed a lot of time, and Chicharito in 2 of his 4 seasons. Jonathan Dos Santos was injured a lot. Zlatan played all the time. Zlatan rarely missed a game, and if he did, it was because of a card or because of turf. Beckham played an awful lot of minutes. Rob, you go back to those championship teams, and you're right. Those teams were really good because their best players were on the field a lot. Beckham was on the field a lot. Keane was on the field a lot. Donovan was on the field a lot.
Let's see. Gary $5 super chat says, Josh, can you do your best Kevin Baxter impression? This all started from last Thursday's show with Sophie, where Sophie did an impression of me that made me cry laughing. And so it's not for me to decide.
Was it good? Was it really good?
I don't know what it was, Kevin. I'm still not sure what it was. It was an approximation, like she was doing the opening to the podcast in my voice, and it felt a little characterish, but I appreciated the full send that she had on that, right? So yeah.
Well, the other day I was giving her a hard time because she has that really thick accent, and I was saying, how come it is with British people, especially singers like the Beatles or whatever, when they speak with that heavy accent, and then when they sing,
right,
there's no trace of it. And she went immediately into a Midwestern American voice ordering a hamburger.
Yes,
and it was hysterical.
See?
It was super funny.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So anyway, my best Kevin Baxter impression will be one that does not approximate his voice, but only approximates the way that he speaks. And I love that Zoltan Ibrahimovic. That guy's the best. So that's my Kevin Baxter impression. That, and let's see.
Yeah, there are other names I mess up a lot more than that one.
I know, but that one's so much more fun to
Although
say.
you know what, Mrs. Panda now is giving me a hard time about that. We were on dog walk, and I mentioned Zlatan the other day, and she came right back with you're saying his name wrong.
Yeah, I know. She knows. Why don't you just listen to your wife? Jeez.
Everybody knows.
Let's see. Gary also asks, if you could bring back one player that we had last season, who would it be? Love the show. Thank you, Gary. Love you too, buddy.
That's a really good question.
I know. I got mine. Let me know when if you want me to go first and you can think about it a little bit more, or
no, I would say, given circumstances right now, I would say Billy Sharp.
I knew you were going to go there. I think that was the easiest one. You know who it was? You know what it was for me? Lucas Caligari. Bring back Caligari.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right?
That's a good one.
And listen, I'm not saying that you wouldn't have to split time between Caligari and Yamane. This is like in a perfect world where you could have a U22 and you could have Yamane. You could have like both worlds, and one of those guys wouldn't play all the time. But having Caligari come off the bench if Yamane got hurt, I'd be in for. Having Caligari be able to play on the left side, play on the right side, doing all that stuff, I really like Caligari's
very
game.
useful. Although my guy would have scored a hat trick in Austin, and the Galaxy would have won 3-2.
He also may have needed the cane that Larry Morgan not on Twitter once gave Zlatan Ibrahimovic for his birthday. Again, I'm just not sure. Let's see. Christian says, Kevin earlier said that this team wasn't a Supporters Shield Cup or a Cup winner, but this is still a good team that can go far in the playoffs. But what about Leagues Cup? Do they have a good chance for a finals or a win? What do you make of Leagues Cup, Mr. Kevin Baxter, for this year? Do you think there's anything to it?
I still hate it. I hate it with a passion. It's a money grab by MLS and Apple. I don't think it's a real legit competitive tournament because of the way the Mexican teams get treated, and they complained about that last year. So I just think it's a distraction, and maybe I'll feel different in 3 or 4 years if this thing gets some tradition behind it. But how many tournaments have we had with Liga MX and things with the All-Star game and everything that we're told this is it? This is really gonna form a competitive alliance with Liga MX, and the things last for 2 or 3 seasons. So I'm still not behind this thing. I don't like it. I think it distracts from the important stuff, which is Supporters Shield and the tournament. Given that, I think the Galaxy have a much better team than they did last year. Mm-hmm. I think once you get through the group stage of that tournament, it tends to pick up speed. If you're a hot team, I think you can go far. But what if they win Leagues Cup? What does it mean? I still don't know. What does it mean?
Something just came across my mind, and I apologize for changing gears so quickly. But if you were a Muppet, you would be Fozzie Bear. I would just like to I'd just like to point that out. I think
is that part of the Kevin Baxter impersonation?
I think
thing?
so. Like
Fuzzy Bear can say Zlatan's name.
Like he can, but like he also goes for the dad joke, right? So I was like, "Who's the? Oh, it's Fozzie Bear." That's like it's like, oh, what do you know that type of thing. So I just like to point that out. For Leagues Cup for me, I guess I'm a lot like some of the GMs and the chief soccer officers in Major League Soccer when they were surprised by how much they enjoyed it and how much they watched it. I think it's the same. I agree with everything that you said. I don't disagree with that. I think it's a money grab, that type of thing. For some reason, I am weirdly drawn to it, like a moth to a flame, and I'm sure I'll watch it again and probably enjoy it. But yes, I don't know how serious the Galaxy take this. We've talked about this. There are only 7 games on the other side of Leagues Cup this year. 7 games. So you're going to want to play some games in there. And you're also probably going to want to not play a whole ton of games too, Kevin, right? Because you're going to want to save yourself for those last 7 games because it's going to be frantic after Leagues Cup. So I don't think you want to go out right away if you're the Galaxy. I think you want to play your 2 games and advance and maybe get 1 or 2 more games out of that. And then that's probably good. That's probably good for you. You're probably done.
Greg Vanney talked about that. I don't remember if it was just me and him talking or if it was part of a press conference or something. But he gave the impression that there's this really fine line to walk. You don't necessarily, everybody goes in the tournament to win, and that's what they're going to say. You don't necessarily want to play all those games in the middle of the season.
Yeah, I know.
So if you get knocked out in the quarterfinals and semifinals, I don't think anyone's looking for a sharp object. However, Greg Vanney said, on the other hand, you don't want to lose in the group stage as the Galaxy did last year, because then you're sitting around for an entire month without playing any games. And in the middle of the season, that is a really bad thing. So there is this sweet spot, maybe making it to the quarters of the semifinals. And if you go on and win, then you get a trophy. That's great. But you definitely do not want to go out in the group stage as the Galaxy did last season.
Let's see. Nelson, $5 super shot. Thank you for that, Nelson. Hello, gentlemen. Love the show and everything you do. How many clean sheets you think this Galaxy team will have by the end of the season? Currently 1 against Seattle. So let's see. 1 is, so they'll have 3, Kevin. On their current pace, they will have 3.
I think 3 to 5. I think that this team is not, I think the goalkeeping is good. It's not outstanding. It's not Stefan Fry or Brad Stuver. It's good enough to win. I just don't know if it's good enough to get a lot of clean sheets. I think 3 to 5 probably.
Yeah, I think we're sort of in there as well. I will push back. While we were talking about Caligari and stuff and like that, I got Jam says the Galaxy didn't want Caligari. They did. It was just difficult to risk a U22 spot on somebody who had a pretty bad knee injury, not knowing whether or not he'd be back or when he'd be back or how much he'd be able to factor into the season. I actually talked to people within the Galaxy who were very high on Lucas Caligari and would have loved to keep him sans the injury. It just, again, I was told this specifically, which was, if you have a guy like Lucas Caligari on any team in Europe, you keep him, right? Like you have this guy who you develop and you sort of have him going and you're like, oh man, this is going to be really good. And he's on loan and yeah, he gets injured, but you have the money and you have the roster flexibility to be able to eat some of that money and be like, dude, whenever he comes back, he's going to be really good. That's not the case in Major League Soccer. There's too much money that you have to spend on specific spots and you can't risk that. And they couldn't. I think it was actually a smart choice. Even I don't think it was a difficult choice whenever I say this, but I think in a perfect world they would have loved to keep Caligari on the team.
You know where he is physically right now? Because I had heard that he was back in LA and I was troubled as to whether that meant the Galaxy were responsible for taking care of the surgery and the rehab because he was playing for them when he got hurt, even though he was on loan, or whether he just wanted to do the surgery and rehab here because he thought the facilities and the doctors were better than back home. Or maybe that wasn't true at all. Maybe he wasn't here.
He was here. He was here, absolutely, as I get a cramp in my leg, which is always fun at this time of night. He was here. He was, I think I asked and sort of said, hey, what's going on with that? And the general answer was just probably, this was a guess, but probably he still had a house in LA because he still had it. whenever and before it was completely done. He was back visiting. Maybe he got to pick up his stuff. Maybe his family was still here, sort of cleaning up the rest of their life and getting ready to move back to wherever they were going. So I think that was probably the major reason. I don't think that there was, and it could have been that the Galaxy were also responsible for some of his salary and some of his medical care and all that sort of stuff as it was going on. And that, hey, why not? This is a pretty good place to rehab if you're going to rehab. So I didn't have any issues, but that's probably what happened. Can't say for sure, but that's probably what happened. Let's see. I'm trying to see any other charts that I sort of want to get to. There's not a lot in these, and you guys know sort of where everything stands right now. Looking at April losses with wins in between. The Greg Vanney curse continues, Kevin. The Greg Vanney still hasn't won 3 games in a row as an LA Galaxy head coach. That's fun. It's now to me about Sunday and looking about the reaction. And I think Maya Yoshida said it after the game. He said, how do we react to this? He goes, I would prefer not to make excuses. He goes, we could talk about the field. We could talk about the humidity. He goes, we could talk about the referee. We could talk about the early start time, but I prefer not to make excuses. I prefer just have a good reaction for the next game against Seattle, who he said he knew was going to be a difficult game to be playing against. So for them, I think that's the next key is, we talked about it after the loss to LAFC. How does this team react? What do you do? How do you show that you've learned a lesson or that the momentum hasn't been gone? Because Greg Vanney was talking about momentum, Kevin, and he said very clearly that he told the players that momentum is such a scarce, fragile thing in Major League Soccer, that so many things can sort of turn on a dime in Major League Soccer, that when you have momentum, you need to take advantage of it. So, did this kill the momentum? Is this going to get better? This is where the LA Galaxy are right now, which is they're going to go up against a wounded Seattle team. We talked about Stefan Fry being out. We talked about Alex Roldan being out. Roldan got an extra game tacked onto a red card by the Disco, and then Stefan Fry was red carded in the game against DC United. They lost that game 2-1. They ended up scoring early in that game, and then gave up 2 goals after they went down to 10 men. So the Galaxy have a wounded animal on the road in a tough place to play. God only hopes it's not raining, so that way they don't have to play Seattle in the rain again 2 times in a row in the first 11 games of the season, which would be interesting. But this is it. This is the reaction, Kevin. What do you get out of these guys? Is this a good team that reacts well? Is this a panicking team that reacts poorly to Seattle? And I don't need a win against Seattle. That's not what road games are about. Make a good showing, get as many points as possible, continue on, and then come home and host, Real Salt Lake on May 11th.
Well, by the way, there is a chance of rain on Sunday in Seattle.
Of course there is. It's Seattle.
But in a set. Well, the Galaxy cannot afford to overlook Seattle, which they may have done if they had beaten Austin, especially if they'd beaten them convincingly. They might be looking ahead to Salt Lake, which is in first place, a big game at home. Galaxy looking ahead to that Jalen Neal bobblehead giveaway.
Yep.
But now they can't do that because they need this win in Seattle, and Seattle is I think more than San Jose, Seattle has kind of become a rival of both LA teams, but especially the Galaxy.
I mean, Seattle has been a rival for a while. I'll say this right now, as somebody pointed out, as Gary pointed out, they're a wounded orca, not a wounded whale, just to put a little a specific spin on it. But Seattle, like you said, 1-5-3, they're -1 on goal differential. They're a better team than they've been playing, but it's definitely a game to watch. They only have 6 points on the entire season. This is, they're going to be up for this game because they have all these pieces missing. The Galaxy going to be missing Riqui Puig. Where does Diego Fagundes play? How do the Galaxy sort of shore up the middle? Do you get a really fun central midfield, which I would imagine you're going to, of Gaston Brugman and Mark Delgado and Edwin Cerrillo in there, right? So that's going to be sort of interesting to watch. And how do the Galaxy play when there is no Riqui Puig? For the most part, Riqui Puig has been on the field his entire time he's been with the LA Galaxy. He doesn't miss a lot of games. Obviously, last year and through the stretch got injured and that type of thing. The Galaxy had almost no talent on the field whenever he went down. This is a different team with Brugman, with Paintsel, with Peck, who's going to step up, with Delgado, with Cerrillo, right? Whether or not Dejan Joveljic can come back from his injury, his thigh/hip. Where Greg Vanney said that the hip bone is connected to the thigh bone. And he was like, it's somewhere in between there, where the exact injury is. So these are all the things that sort of lead up to the Seattle game. You have here's going to be the problem, and this is a little preview for the Thursday night show. You have a really good opportunity, Kevin, to handle somebody like Seattle while they're struggling before they probably have a summer window, before they get better, all those fun things. So this is the chance that the Galaxy.
So what do you do? Do you put Delgado into the Riqui Puig role and then put Surreal in his spot and leave Bergman where he is?
No,
what do you do?
Brugman goes into the Puig spot. But they'll play it differently. They won't play it like the same way. Like, Brugman won't go running all over the field chasing things. Brugman will distribute from the center, I think. Delgado will sort of orbit around him on either side. And then you'll let Cerrillo be the 6 back there and be the more defensive midfielder. And Delgado will come back and sort of play a little more of the 8, I guess, and while you let Brugman try to play the 10 a little bit. You can also bring in Fagundes if you wanted to. I honestly think that starting Berry in against Seattle is going to be a big risk for the Galaxy, just because of his lack of offense. And so maybe you go from the very beginning with Paintsel or Peck up top, with Fagundes on the outside. It makes the bench a little bit shorter whenever you start moving those pieces around, which is why Vanny might not go that direction. But to me, Miguel Berry is very much on a short leash. Vanny was very nice in all the things he said about Miguel Berry. He didn't mention, he didn't say, hey, I took him off at halftime because the dude didn't touch the ball. But that being said, I think that was one of the reasons he got taken off at halftime.
What he did say is he said with Miguel again, he just has not played a ton of minutes with the group, and I felt a little bit like he needs to get his timing and rhythm. Certain things. He's played 236 minutes, so I don't know that I'm buying that. But I do think you point out sort of the problem Greg Vanney has. If he goes with Fagundes, then there's really nothing he can go to the bench to do. You're not going to take Fagundes off and bring Berry in and think that you're going to get more offense. So maybe he does start Berry to give him the option of switching things up in the second half or at halftime late in the game by bringing Fagundes on. If you sort of go with that from the start, then you have nowhere to go.
Going to be an interesting one. The LA Galaxy will face Seattle coming up on Sunday, 3:45 p.m. That game is on MLS Season Pass and FS1, another Fox game. Is that 3 in a row for the Galaxy on Fox? It feels like it is. San Jose and then Austin. Yeah, it is. So make sure you watch that one. A busy, May coming up for everybody. So 6 games in May. Going to be real busy. Going to be a busy time. Going to see the LA Galaxy and whether or not they can handle all the rapid fire games. May is coming there, and then you go into June, which June has 5 games. So the Galaxy eventually have to play more home games than they play away games, Kevin. I'm almost sure of it, seeing the math and all the away games the Galaxy played. It just never feels like they're at home for very long. This is maybe May. They have 3 of 6 games at home. Again, that's even and split. When do the Galaxy get all these lopsided home games? I'm waiting for it. There's at least 2 home games.
It would be late in the season, which would be exactly when they won them.
It could be. Absolutely could be. So, all right, cool. Kevin, anything else that you wanted to get to tonight before we go?
No, Fozzie Bear is done.
Okay, just checking. Just check. It made sense to me. That's it. Fozzie
is a bear and pandas are bears, so there's some form to that.
Yep. I was going with that as well. So, all right, if you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter and X, it's at KBaxter11. Head on over to LA Times for all of his soccer coverage, all of his hockey, all of his basketball coverage. You can find it at latimes.com. We're glad to have him back, even if his camera wasn't working this time. We got a really nice picture of him. He looks nothing like that anymore. Trust me. That might as well be AI over there. Let's see. If you're looking for me on Twitter and X, it's at Guesman, at Galaxy Podcast. CorneroftheGalaxy.com is where you can find us. So head on over to CorneroftheGalaxy.com, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, all that fun stuff is where you can find our podcast. Just type in Corner of the Galaxy and you will find it. The LA Galaxy getting ready to take on Seattle on Sunday, so a little bit of a longer week as we wait for that next game, but we'll be back on Thursday night to get you ready for that game. For Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, also known as Fozzie Bear, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening and watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the box. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.